Hello and welcome to today's video on Heritage in Depth, where we'll discuss BRICS and Africa. BRICS is perhaps the most used buzzword in many geopolitical conversations, which is actually the acronym for the Association of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and has become an essential player on the global stage. But what does this fusion of emerging economies mean for Africa, a continent seemingly governed by the trend of the Western world? And how does this group impact the continent? Let's take it from why BRICS was formed. It's the early 2000s and the world is changing. The global economy is becoming more multipolar, with emerging economies like China, India, and Brazil starting to question the dominance of the traditional Western powers. Against this backdrop in 2006, a group of 4 emerging economies, Brazil, India, and Russia and China, came together to form an association known as BRIC. Russia held the first summit of a member's country in 2009, and the formation of BRICS resulted from this country's increasing economic stride and the need for a united voice in international affairs. The idea was to create a forum for these countries to coordinate their policies and push for greater representation on the global stage. By joining hands, they could achieve more significant economic and political clout globally. In 2011, the group expanded to include South Africa, and BRIC became BRICS. This move adds another key player to the group, a country with significant economic potential and strategic importance in Africa. With South Africa on board, the group now represents 40% of the world's population and around 20% of global GDP. Let's take a look at why each member joined the alliance. As it is often said, politics is a game of interest. The idea behind the BRIC alliance was not really for a grand altruistic purpose, but rather to further each member nation's interests. Brazil, for starters, being the largest economy in South America, joined BRICS because it wanted to increase its economic ties with other emerging economies and reduce its dependence on the United States and Europe. Brazil has a diverse economy, and it saw BRICS as an opportunity to tap into the fast-growing markets of China and India. Meanwhile, Russia, with its vast natural resources, saw BRICS as a means to diversify its economy and reduce its dependence on energy exports. Russia also saw BRICS as a way to counterbalance the United States' dominance in international affairs. India joined the alliance to increase its trade with other emerging economies and promote economic growth. India also saw BRICS as a platform to address global issues like climate change and terrorism. China, the world's second largest economy and manufacturing powerhouse, joined BRICS because it wanted to increase its influence in international affairs and promote the use of its currency, the yuan, in global trade. China also saw BRICS as an opportunity to promote its Belt and Road Initiative, which strives to connect Asia with Europe and Africa through infrastructure investment. South Africa, the only African country in BRICS, joined the group to increase its economic ties with other emerging economies and gain greater access to the markets of China and India. It also saw BRICS as an opportunity to address African countries' unique challenges such as poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. But what makes BRICS so special? While all member nations joined the alliance to further their individual interests, it is important to explain why the BRICS alliance is formidable. We can start with the large population pool of its members' country. China and India alone account for almost 35% of the world's population, and Russia and Brazil and South Africa are not far behind. This gives the group a significant economic might and market significance. Another characteristic is the growing economies of the BRIC countries. China has become the world's second largest economy in recent years, and India and Brazil are also snowballing. Russia also has a sizable resource-based economy, and South Africa is an industrial powerhouse in Africa. They are now key players in international diplomacy, and their growing economic clout means that they can increasingly set agenda on issues like trade, climate change, and global governance. But what does this all mean for Africa? Let's take a look at the impact of BRICS on Africa. We must examine the historical and economic context to understand why BRICS countries engage with Africa. Africa has long been a continent of great potential, but has also been plagued by poverty, conflict, and underdevelopment. This has led to a high economic dependency on developed countries, resulting in limited economic growth and development. BRIC countries see an opportunity in Africa's potential. They recognize that Africa is home to some of the largest growing economies in the world and has a large and youthful population. By engaging with Africa, the BRIC countries can tap into Africa's vast natural resources, increase market access, and enhance the continent's economic growth. Since the formation of BRICS in the early 2000s, its impact and effects, both positive and negative, have been felt like footprints on the sand of time all over Africa. And as time progresses, so will the impact. But what are they? Let's start with the positives. Since the formation of BRICS, there has been a significant increase in investment, trade, and development on the African continent. China in particular has become Africa's largest trading partner, with trade between Africa and China increasing from between $10 billion in 2000 to over $220 billion in 2014. In addition, South Africa has played a significant role in promoting Africans' interests within the BRICS group. South Africa is the only African country in BRICS and has used its position to advocate for greater African representation in global institutions. For example, South Africa pushed for establishing the New Development Bank, which focuses on funding infrastructure projects in developing countries. Let's take a look at the negative impact. The negative implications of BRIC engagement with Africa can be seen in various sectors, including agriculture, mining, and infrastructure development. In addition, BRIC countries have been accused of engaging in exploitative practices that harms the environment and violates the rights of local communities. For example, Chinese mining companies operating in Africa have been accused of exploiting and exploitative practices, such as employing local workers in unsafe and unregulated working conditions and causing environmental damage. Chinese mining companies have also been accused of violating human rights, such as forcibly evicting local communities. Some of these untoward practices are not limited to China alone. Brazilian agricultural companies operating in Africa have been accused of land grabbing, where they acquire land from local communities without their consent and engage in environmentally damaging practices, such as using pesticides that harm local communities' health. In addition, BRIC countries' infrastructure development projects in Africa have faced criticism from Western quarters for their lack of transparency and accountability. Some projects have been accused of being poorly planned and executed, resulting in environmental damage and social displacement. There is also the concern in the issue of debt trap. Some African countries have borrowed heavily from China to fund infrastructure projects, and there are some concerns that this debt may become unsustainable. Some argue that BRIC countries need to do more to ensure that African resources are being used to benefit African countries. To do this, African countries must proactively engage with the BRICS country. They need to negotiate good deals, ensure that projects are sustainable, and push for greater local content in projects. In addition, African countries need to build their capacity to negotiate these deals so they are not dependent on outside actors. Let's take a look at some examples of BRICS engagements with Africa. Let's take a look at some specifics. For starters, we have China's impact on the continent's transportation and trade sector. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. The BRI is a massive infrastructure project to connect China with the rest of the world through a network of roads, railway, ports, and other infrastructure. Africa is a crucial part of the BRI, and China has invested heavily in infrastructure projects across the continent. For example, China has funded the construction of the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, which connects the landlocked Ethiopia to the port of Djibouti. China has also invested in port projects in countries like Kenya and Tanzania. The potential benefits of China's engagement with Africa through the BRI are significant. Improved infrastructure can facilitate trade, investment, and economic growth, creating jobs and reducing poverty. However, concerns about potential debt traps and environmental risk are also associated with some of the BRI projects. In recent years, China has invested heavily in dangerous infrastructure, particularly transportation. One example is the Abuja-Kaduna Railway, built by Chinese companies and opened in 2016. This railway line connects Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, with Kaduna, a central commercial hub in the north of the country. It has helped to improve transportation links and boost economic growth in the region. We have the South Africa and Russian investment. South Africa is another African country that has benefited from BRICS countries' engagement, in particular, Russia. Russia has been investing in South Africa's mining sector, which significantly contributes to the country's economy. This investment is expected to create jobs and stimulate economic growth in the region. We also have the Morocco-India Sustainable Energy Development. Morocco, located in North Africa, has been working with India to promote renewable energy. In 2022, the Moroccan Agency for Solar Energy and India's National Thermal Power Corporation signed a memorandum of understanding to cooperate on developing solar power projects in Morocco. The Ministry of Power said that this cooperation intends to support services for capacity building, shared experiences, know-how, and expertise in the area of mutual interest, especially in the field of research and development. This ministry hopes this MOU will further exploit joint development opportunities for renewable energy power projects in other African countries. We also have the Brazil-Kenya relation. Brazil has been working to improve relations in Kenya, beginning with the More Doctors Initiative in 2013. The More Doctors Initiative aims to provide healthcare to underserved areas of the country. Brazil also seeks more investment deals in agriculture, heavy machinery, engineering, construction, auto, and healthcare sector. South Africa hosting the BRICS Summit is another example of BRICS engagement with Africa. South Africa hosting the BRICS Summit in 2013 and 2018. The summit brought together leaders from various BRICS countries to discuss issues of mutual interest. The summit also allowed South Africa to showcase the investment opportunities and promote itself as a gateway to the rest of the continent. Finally, consider Brazilian's partnership with African countries in the agriculture and energy sectors. Brazil has expertise in agriculture and biofuel and has partnered with countries like Mozambique and Angola to develop these sectors. Brazil also has invested in hydroelectric projects in countries like Zambia and Zimbabwe that are meant to reduce the country's energy deficit.